someone can do it. So those experiences that you usually come up with. So it was good. For me, it was a good reminder that sometimes it works when you do things together. Remember about TPM? Launch is in exactly 7 days. The Kids Awards is in exactly 11 days. Yeah. Okay. For those who have 6 loved ones,
the details in the return. If a taxpayer makes a payment, they would go to the bank, make a payment, and then bring the receipt to KRA for the payment to be captured. Why is it necessary for me to tell you about how that system used to operate? Because it will point to you some of the gaps that might arise on the side of the taxpayer and might push the taxpayer to request for reconciliation. Because I've talked about the taxpayer will take the payment to the bank and then later bring the payment evidence to our cash office to be receipted. We note there are some taxpayers who really made the payment, but the payments were never brought to our cash office for receipting. So when you're conversing with the taxpayer, they'll be sure they paid. But from KRA side, it was not paid because the system was not fully automated. Then we shifted to the ITMS system around 07 to 2015. And this was somehow semi-automated. The taxpayer would file the returns for themselves and they would make payments. But the payments still, they were required. Some taxpayers who did not make the payments through the authorized banks, the payments would need or require manual reconciliation. And which were these authorized banks? There were only 4 banks that could receive our payments. And once you made payments to those banks, the payments would update your ledger automatically. And these banks were KCB, Corp Bank, NBK, and CBK. If a taxpayer made payments through these 4 banks, the payment would automatically update their ledger. Then, before we moved to Itax, we noted that there were some challenges with the ITMS system. So what happened? All the assessments that were in ITMS were posted back to the legacy system. That is why you're seeing there is an overlap between the year 07 to 2015 in legacy and ITMS. So all the assessments that the taxpayer filed, that is the returns they filed in ITMS, were posted back to legacy, and some payments were posted. But we noted that we could not post all payments because during the same time, taxpayers were forwarding payments for receipting in legacy system. So to avoid duplication of payments, not all payments were posted, and this was posted later during data migration, a process I will take you through. So when did the data migration happen? We moved now, before I come to data migration, then after 2015, that is when we moved to Itax system, where the taxpayer can file their returns and make payments, and immediately they make the payment, the ledger would update. The gap that was there between ITMS and legacy is in Itax, between Itax and legacy is Itax taxpayer is able to file and pay, and also be able to view everything that they are doing in Itax system. But in legacy, the office or the taxpayer had to come to the officer, and then the officer would provide them with the information in the legacy system. So when did we start the data migration process? The data migration process started immediately we moved to Itax. There was a team that was put in place that was handling all reconciliation and migration processes. And this team was called CDO, that is Corporate Data Office. So any taxpayer who wanted to do data migration, before this team was formed in around 2018, but before then, all data migration were being handled within domestic taxes department. But around 2018, 2019, the CDO team was given the mandate to migrate. So as I speak about it, I believe there are some taxpayers who are aware that they used to take their documents to Wilson Airport because that is where the team used to sit. So they started the process of data migration, and what happened is all taxpayers were communicated to about the balances that were in the legacy system. And they were told to confirm the balances by a certain date. And there was a public notice to that effect. And they were informed that if they don't give feedback by that date, the balances would be migrated as they are. And after the notice period expired, we noted a lot of balances were migrated into Itax. And how did the migration happen for these balances? The balances that were migrated by the Corporate Data Office after the public notice, taxpayers' balances were being migrated as a lump sum, meaning we would go to your legacy account, do a summation of all balances in each of the periods, and then migrate that balance to Itax. And during migration, we would migrate including interest and penalties. But after some time, we noted that the entire data set was never migrated. And so we embarked on the phase 2 of data migration that happened in 2024 June. So on June 2024, we did mass data migration where we moved all the data that was in legacy system to Itax system. And despite the fact that we did that mass data migration, there are some things that we can say were left out, and that is where I want to start from. So what did we do during the migration process? What were the processes that took place for us to do the full data migration so that you can understand where we came from, where the balances you're seeing in Itax came from. Because a lot of questions are coming from taxpayers. I don't understand these balances. Where are they coming from? So I wanted to take you through the process so that you internalize it, so that in case you're following up for any reconciliation, it's very clear to you where the balances or how the balances came about. So the first step is we were to do a preparation of the platform where the migrated data will be posted, because this was in a very different system that was legacy, and the balances needed to be migrated to Itax, where all the other taxpayers' transactions appear. And why did we migrate to Itax? Because we want the taxpayer to have a view of all their balances at the same platform. We don't want the taxpayer to be going to get a statement on legacy data and then come to Itax to get data on Itax. So we wanted to put all these data on one platform, that is Itax, where they can view what is happening on their transactions. And also the other benefit of migrating is because we noted there are some taxpayers who kept on referring to credits that were left in legacy system, which they wish to utilize in Itax. And they could not utilize the same credits while in the legacy system. So we were to bring all these balances in the same system and the same platform so that taxpayers would utilize this credit. So the platform these balances were to be migrated to is what we call Itax legacy account. And how do you access the Itax legacy account? When a taxpayer logs into their Itax iPage, they will go to debt enforcement. Down there, they will be able to see all their transactions which were migrated, the balances that were migrated. And now when we moved these balances to the legacy account from the back office, now from the KRA staff, there are many transactions that had been posted in the legacy account. So before migrating, we had to start the process of cleaning the legacy account. And what do we mean by cleaning the Itax legacy account? When a taxpayer who had legacy debt wanted to pay, we would create an assessment in legacy account, Itax legacy account, to enable the taxpayer to generate a PRN so that they could pay. Upon payment, the payment would be updated in Itax, but not in the legacy system. So it would update Itax legacy account and not in the legacy system account, meaning a taxpayer would have paid their debt in Itax for the legacy period, but when you go to legacy system, you would find the taxpayer has a debt, but when you come to Itax legacy account, the taxpayer does not have a debt. So we had to make sure we remove the debts that had duplicated, because the taxpayer was created in Itax legacy to facilitate payment of legacy debt. So we had to clean that data. The second assessment that you'll find in Itax legacy account is where an audit or a compliance check was done and a new assessment is posted in Itax legacy account. So you would find a taxpayer in the year 2013, 2014, they did not file any return. So an audit was done, investigation was done, and a new assessment was raised. This assessment, because this was the transition period, the legacy system had been closed, Itax was now coming into place. So some of these assessments were raised in Itax legacy account. And lastly, some of the assessments you're likely to find in Itax legacy account is where a taxpayer had a debt in legacy and they made their payment in legacy through ITMS system, but the payment did not reflect in legacy. So most of these taxpayers had a lot of concern because they felt they had already made payment through ITMS, yet the payment did not reflect in their legacy account. So what happened for these taxpayers is to enable them get the confidence that their payment was received. The same assessment was raised in Itax legacy and a payment updated to balance off. But these updates, as you can hear what I'm saying, were posted in Itax. So when you go to legacy, you will find the debt there. When you come to Itax legacy account, there is no debt. But during migration, we were moving all the balances in legacy to Itax, meaning some of the debts that were already paid might have been migrated because there was no distinction between the legacy debt and the Itax legacy debt that was created to facilitate payment of the legacy system debt. So some taxpayers, why am I explaining this? Some taxpayers will go to Itax legacy account and find similar debts. They find a debt for May 2014, and then they find another debt for May 2014. The one for May 2014 was raised in 2024 June, and the other one was brought earlier. It might be the same debt. And once we validate with the taxpayer, we will delete one of the debts. So that is why I needed to explain what happened when I talk about preparation of the platform where migrated data will be posted. So that is number one of the validations and the reconciliations taxpayers we have seen taxpayers come about asking about. Some of them come asking, why do I see a debt of 20 million in Itax legacy account and other small debts of 10 million and 10 million that equals to the 20 million? When we validate with the officers, you will find some of these debts might be a duplication of the same consolidated amount that was earlier posted. And how will you differentiate the two? If you find any payment in Itax legacy that is for periods prior to June 2024, it was an earlier migration or earlier assessment. So you need to compare any migrated balances in June 2024 with any balances prior to that date, so that you can distinguish whether it was an additional assessment or it was a new assessment. Going to number 2, after the platform is clean now, we posted all unposted payments, and I've talked about payments in ITMS system that were not posted. There are some other payments we are calling Itax hanging payments. And what were Itax hanging payments? These were payments made by the taxpayer in Itax, but for legacy period. And this happened mostly between 2014, the year 2014, where a taxpayer paid 2 installments in legacy. And because there is an Itax system, they paid 2 installments in Itax. But during year end, they did not feel very comfortable. They reverted to filing the returns in legacy system. So you will find this taxpayer has a debt in legacy because 2 of the installments are hanging in Itax without a return. So we posted Itax hanging payment to legacy before computing the balances to migrate. And also ITMS payments that the taxpayer had made and had not been updated, we also posted all VAT Itax ITMS payments. And I'll mention why we did not post for income tax. Other payments that we updated in the legacy system before migration are any manual payments that the taxpayer provided, and we confirmed that the same payments had been received. So why did we not post the income tax payment? Because during the transition period from ITMS, Itax legacy to Itax, and during that migration process, the legacy system was open and any update for income tax were possible. So if a taxpayer found they have a debt in legacy and they had evidence of payment, they would provide this evidence to the CDO team, and the team was able to update the income tax ledger with the payments. But for VAT, the system was locked. They could not update any VAT payments. That is why I'm saying when we were posting the payments before migration, we ensured we posted all ITMS payments for VAT and also income tax hanging payments and also manual payments for VAT, because these were not, it was not possible to post these payments during the migration process. But during the automated migration, we were able to post all these payments. So you might find a taxpayer as ITMS payments that have not been updated for income tax because during the migration process, these payments were never brought to KRA. So these are some of the payments that we expect taxpayer to bring and say, I have this ITMS payment for income tax that was never posted. And I will take you through that process too. After we posted all payments, now we were confident the taxpayer's ledger were complete. We went to the next step, which was cleaning the now complete ledger in preparation for migration. And why was it necessary? What were we cleaning? When we talk about cleaning, what do we mean? In the legacy ledger, we noted some taxpayers who had unconfirmed assessments. And when I say unconfirmed assessment, there is a way we could identify this unconfirmed state assessment. And once we identify an assessment that had not been confirmed, it means this assessment was never communicated to the taxpayer after it was raised, or even if it was communicated, there was an objection process that was ongoing. So for any unconfirmed assessment, the policy guidance was that they all be reverted to zero. So if there was an assessment of 100 million or 10 million that was not confirmed, the guidance was we revert to zero because we cannot communicate this debt now, which is way past the period we are supposed to confirm the assessment. That was to the benefit of the taxpayer. We also noted, I don't know whether it was a system bug or something, where a taxpayer would get a waiver in excess of the interest and penalties that were in the ledger. As you know, the conventional way of doing taxation is you don't get a waiver in excess of the interest and penalty amount. The same for amnesty. You could not get amnesty in excess of the interest and penalties amount. But there are some years we could find waivers that were given in excess of interest and penalty. And it's important for you to note the adjustments we made for this. Where we found a waiver was given in excess, we would reduce the credit by the excess amount. Because there are some taxpayers who got these credits and they were migrated to Itax. And maybe this taxpayer would be wondering, I already got this credit. Why can't I access this credit again? It's because after fresh computation, we noted some of the credits we had been given were as a result of excess waiver that we should never have happened. We also noted some payments without a return. You would find in a particular year, maybe 2004, a taxpayer and installment taxes, including balance of tax, but there is no return. For a taxpayer to pay balance of tax, there was a return. So meaning either the taxpayer did not provide the return, which was so common, or maybe the return was somehow not captured. So to balance of that record, we introduced a debit that was equivalent to the installment and balance of tax amount. The other one was there are some pay refunds. I've mentioned that the legacy system was locked for VAT. So we noted some of the refunds that were paid during that period and not been posted in the ledger, giving the taxpayer extra credit. So during this transition period, during migration, we ensured the ledgers were updated with refund amounts that had not previously been posted. And also there is what we are calling add tax, where taxpayers paid additional assessments to additional taxes, but the additional taxes maybe had not been confirmed. We also made adjustments to that. After that, now we were confident the ledgers were updated and were ready for migration. But before migration, that was happening during amnesty period. We had to give you taxpayers the amnesty for this period. So the taxpayers who had already cleared the principal taxes, when you look at the legacy ledger now, because now the ledger is complete, we noted taxpayers who had already paid the principal amount in full, but the only outstanding debt in their ledgers were interest and penalties. And we gave amnesty in legacy system worth 205 billion. So there are some taxpayers, so many taxpayers who benefited from this amnesty. And when you go to the legacy system, will not now find their debts as a result of interest and penalty. After now giving amnesty, we applied some rules to migrate. And which were these rules that we applied? We compared now the total balances the taxpayer has in legacy with the balances in Itax. Because the balances we were comparing to is the balances the taxpayer claimed in first return. During migration period, during the transition period from legacy to Itax, taxpayers were allowed to claim credits in the first return. So when you're filing the first return in Itax, that was in 2015 or 2014, taxpayers could claim any credits from legacy system in Itax. For example, if you had paid installments in legacy, and now the return is filed in Itax, meaning 2 installments are in legacy, 2 installments are in Itax, taxpayers could bring the 2 installments from legacy to Itax through the return. And you could capture any PRN with any number like 123 and then put the amount, and the system would accept that amount. So we noted during migration, there are some taxpayers who claimed credits in first return that never existed in legacy. You go to legacy, you look for these credits when you are doing the balances to migrate, and you don't find any credit. Yet the taxpayer claimed credits in first return. And the others we found is, I've talked about migration that was happening earlier by CDO team. During that migration, maybe the overall position of the taxpayer was a credit, and this credit was migrated to Itax. This migration happened through giving the taxpayers a voucher that was starting with the series 5020. And these vouchers can be found under advanced tax. When you go to advanced tax and you find any voucher starting with 5020 instead of 2020, it means this was migrated legacy credits. So there are some taxpayers who had already gotten the 5020 series credit vouchers. Yet the same balance is the one that we are migrating to Itax. So that the taxpayer does not get double credits. That is, they had already migrated through 5020, or they had already claimed these credits through the first return. We brought back the credits they had claimed in Itax and then added back as a debit, so that we reduce now the credit we are migrated by the amount already migrated. So in short, the checking of first return credit or 5020 series or manually reconciled payment was to adjust the balance we are migrating now and reduce the amount already migrated through the first return or the 5020 series. So when you look at your ledger, this will be when you go to your TSO and you get the JASPA report, you'll find this is marked as 5020 credit contra, or you'll find it marked as first return credit debit contra. So it can be either of them. So after we adjusted now the balance, we looked at what did you claim in Itax. If we find you had claimed already 20 million, we will bring it back as a debit in legacy, so that we reduce the credits we are migrating from legacy to Itax by the 20 million already claimed. But there are some taxpayers we noted who had claimed the credits in the first return, but these credits were disallowed through the Section 42 task force, because there was a team that was formed to confirm whether taxpayers claimed the correct credits. So some taxpayers had already claimed, but these credits were disallowed. So during now the migration that we were doing, we gave back these credits to the taxpayer. So when the taxpayer go to their migrated balances, they'll find a credit in the year 2014 that is equivalent to the credit they wanted to carry forward, so they can utilize it. But I'll come to how you can utilize this credit. And then after we got the correct balance, we did that final migration. We migrated the balances to Itax. And the migration that happened is for income tax, we migrated both the debit and credit balances for income tax. Whether the taxpayer had overall debit or credit, we did the migration. For VAT, we only migrated the taxpayers that had debit balances, And if your overall balance was a debit, we migrated your both debit and credit entries. And migration was happening per period. So when you go to Itax, you'll find any period that had a net, a balance, either a credit or net debit, that balance was migrated. Example, if 2010 taxpayer had an assessment of 20 million and they paid 10 million, when you go to Itax, you will find the difference, that is 10 million, meaning that is the difference between the self-assessed amount and the amount paid. If the year 2012, the taxpayer had an assessment of 10 million and they paid 15 million, what you'll find in Itax is 5 million, which is the difference, and it will be a credit balance. So what is remaining? Although I've talked about we have already done the migration, what is it that has remained and we are planning to conclude? We have given the taxpayers up to 31st December 2024 to check, confirm the migrated balances, and in case they have any reconciliation issues or clarification they seek to get, we have given them up to 31st December to provide this information to our offices so that we can support the taxpayer in confirming the migrated balances. So this is an open window that has been given, despite the initial one that was given by CDO in 2020. This is a second chance that I've given to the taxpayers to confirm the migrated balances and cross-check with their records and make payments. But where they feel there are some payments that might be missing, once they provide that information, we'll facilitate the reconciliation. So this will be an exercise that will be carried between the taxpayer and our officers. The second one is sharing of validation guideline with taxpayers. We are at the tail end of making these guidelines that will be hosted on KRA website. So once you go to KRA website, I believe before the end of this week, let me not be very overambitious, but before the end of this month, we expect the taxpayer guidelines to be hosted on KRA website, and you'll be able to go there and know exactly what is expected for you. For example, if there is a payment that you made and you cannot find it, now the guideline tells you how to go about it so that we can fully reconcile your records. The third one is cancellation of Itax prior balances. I've talked about preparation of where the migrated data was to lie. And this was to happen through cancellation of Itax prior balances. So the income tax Itax prior balances were to be cancelled, but we noted that there are some transactions that were genuine. I've talked about assessments raised by IND, that is investigation and enforcement, assessments raised by the transfer pricing team, others done by audit, and all of them were under Itax prior. So cancellation of these Itax prior balances will be done together with the debt offices. So you will go to the debt office, you will review the Itax prior balances in case you find two balances or a balance you don't agree with or a balance you don't understand. You will review these balances with your debt officers, and where it's found it's a duplication of what was in legacy, that balance will be cancelled. And then you'll be left with the debit you need to pay. We also have not done migration for pay-as-you-earn, data validation and migration. The reason we did not do pay-as-you-earn migration of data, it's because the pay-as-you-earn ledger was a self-balancing return. We were capturing, in short, the debit side was being updated as you were presenting the payment capture. So upon capturing of the payment, the debit was populating and there was no debt in pay-as-you-earn. You either pay what is in the return or you don't pay. So what you are likely to find in the payee return are gaps where you find a taxpayer did not file a return for this period and the payment is missing. And for those, that we are doing an analysis of these gaps and the same will be communicated to the taxpayer. There are some taxpayers we found that the last return they filed in legacy was December 2013, but the first return they are filing in Itax is January 2015, meaning this taxpayer, the entire 2014, there is no return and there is no evidence of payment. So these gaps, once we finalize the process, will be communicated to the taxpayer. There are, however, some concerns that are coming up when it comes to pay as you earn, where taxpayer filed a return in legacy January to June 2014 and filed the remaining returns from July to December 2014 in Itax. The challenge comes on the employees, because when this employee files their return, they will file for the entire year. That is from January to December 2014, meaning the only credits the taxpayer will have on their ledger will be the ones that were filed by the employer on Itax. So the periods the employer filed in legacy, those credits will not appear on the employee's return. But for any pay as you earn, that is income tax individual, that is an employee who encounters such issues, we have provided a way forward. When you go to your TSOs and you have such issues, we have provided for a way forward on how you'll be assisted. Because some of them might be having issues with tax TCCs, that is tax compliance certificates. In case the gap is because of the pay as you earn for January to June that the employer filed in legacy, you will not be denied a TCC. So the employees who maybe feel there are gaps because of the failure to migrate the pay credits for the employer, that has already been provided. It has been sorted with internally, and you'll be assisted in case you get stuck in anything. We are also finding some taxpayers who filed in legacy pay as you earn for maybe June to December 2014 and paid. So when you go to legacy, you find the ledger is balanced. But when you come to Itax, they came and filed the same returns. That is July to December 2014. So these taxpayers have been requesting we move the payments from legacy to Itax. And it's becoming a challenge because the legacy ledger is already balanced. So why was it necessary to file the same returns in Itax? We have already sought for guidance on how to do the cancellation of the legacy transactions so that we can bring the payment in Itax and balance of your account. So we are getting such requests, but it's overwhelming because you filed the returns in two systems and it should not have happened because the legacy system had already been filed, it was balanced, and now you have filed another return in Itax and you are asking for the same credits that were in legacy to be brought in Itax. So we will be giving a notice on the treatment of the same within a shorter time. And also we have income tax individual that we have not migrated. That is A pins. If your pin starts with A, there are some A pins that we have not migrated, and these are A pins where they only had employment income. But if this taxpayer had a VAT number, business number, or paid installment taxes, we migrated. But where they did not have any of that, it was only employment income, we did not migrate. We migrated, but it's not visible to the taxpayer. The reason we did not make it visible to the taxpayer is because the debt of the employee is recoverable from the employer. But we note there are some taxpayers who have refunds and wish to be paid. So this information is visible to the back office, that is KRA staff. And in case the taxpayer has a refund that they are following on, they will be assisted. But in the long run, once we process all the refunds, we will communicate to the taxpayer. Once the refund, you just need to follow up with the refund the normal way you have been following, and it will be processed. There are also legacy refunds that were processed and paid through a standalone workflow system. So these ones will also be updated. This is likely to affect your migrated credits. In case you go to your migrated credits in Itax legacy account and find there is a credit of maybe 20 million and you come later and find the credit is 15, or during validation of credits so that you can utilize them, they are reduced to 15, it might be because there is a refund that you were paid, but it was not updated. A refund, when it's updated, it reduces your credit, meaning it comes as a debit. So we are getting information and data we are getting from the unit that processes, and after we receive this information, we are updating the migrated credits with the refunds already paid. So you're likely to find changes on the migrated credits. We have also not computed the penalties for the migrated balances. So you might be going to legacy, Itax legacy account and find this is not the balance that was in legacy. It's because during migration, we only migrated the principal amount. But before long, we will be computing the penalties for the taxpayers will not have paid. So we'll be lumping the penalties and interest that are attributable to the migrated balances. And then we will provide a solution where now when you bring documents for update of your return will be updated. And the workflow is a system that will be provided, an interface that will be provided through Itax. So that if now, when you remember what is happening now, if you have any reconciliation issue, you have to provide the documents to your TSO. Sometimes you might provide the documents, after some time, the officer is transferred. So you start the process afresh. So we want to provide a solution to the taxpayer where you will initiate this process the normal way you generate a PRN from home. You will go to Itax system, initiate a request for reconciliation, and now you will be able to track the progress of your reconciliation request. So we want to resolve this issue of not knowing where your reconciliation is, the process where it has, the stage it has reached. So we'll provide an interface within Itax where you can request for reconciliation. If it's a payment that you made and has not been updated, you can go to the Itax system, initiate and request for this update of payment to be done. And then the documents will be escalated to the relevant officers for reconciliation. And then we'll keep on doing continuous sensitization to all taxpayers on what we are doing. So what are